Make sure you support the car properly. In this case, two jack stands, the splash pan. Now remove the drain plug and drain the transmission fluid, and be sure and check the debris that's on the magnetic portion of the plug for metallic bits or any kind of dark thick sludge. This is pretty clean, as you can see. In the end, you'll get about 4 quarts of fluid out. Go ahead and replace the plug. Don't over tighten it, you'll regret it. Should give you good access to the cover you have to remove that protects the shift solenoids and valve body. It lives under here, so let's get at it. Remove the hose that runs into the top of the cover. There's a push button on the side which allows it to be removed fairly easily. And you can pull the whole thing out by releasing the other side because it's very stiff and it's difficult to get clearance otherwise. You're going to remove the T40 screws that hold the cover on. Always start with a hard one, which in this case is going to be the center top because it's more obstructed by the radiator hose and other debris. So that one's coming off first, followed by the other top ones, and the rest of them are easy. Well, those instincts ended up proving out correct. This is the bolt that lives in the top center of that cover, and this is how I ended up having to get it out with about probably 60 or 70 rotations per revolution, and I needed to get out about 2 full turns before it was loose enough to remove just using the socket. So you don't want to leave that one to last, or it'll just be that much harder. Happily, the rest of these come out with just a regular 3/8" drive, and a short ratchet will get virtually all the rest of them. So they want to be turned about 3 full turns out before they get loose. So again, make sure you do the hard ones first or you'll regret it. A little strategic pressure here on the bottom of the cover should open things up. And this is why you want to do it with the transmission cold. Looks like it's going to be easier to get the pan out if you remove this hose here that's just held on with a single 10mm bolt. That'll just give you a lot more clearance to work the pan out of the way. It's just not worth fighting because the fluid's already drained, so it's not like you're going to get all that much out. Cover's off. You can see it was installed with a sealant rather than a gasket last time for whatever reason, but that won't be hard to fix. And as you can see, the access to the solenoids is really pretty good. I've seen a whole lot worse and dealt with a whole lot worse. The shift solenoids themselves, these lower 4 or 5 circular things, are really easy to get to, and the linear solenoids, which are the ones that are affecting my transmission issue, are the ones up top there, and they're really not going to be bad at all. So I'm going to clean up the gasket surfaces after I get done replacing the linear solenoids, and take it from there. What to do is remove this bolt for this bracket that holds the solenoids in. If I can see what I'm doing, with a 10mm wrench, which should get things loosened up nicely up here. Notice the lack of debris and grunge and little metallic bits floating around in here. That's what every Volvo owner loves to see. And that should loosen up these two solenoids that I've gotten. Come with a handy dandy cheat sheet that shows you where they go in case you forget, as well as a new L-shaped bracket. No bolt though that I can see. So just a matter of replacing them. So let's get at it. Just to recap, just slide out the old solenoid, take a little bath in fluid because there's always going to be a little bit left there, and then probably just use a small thin screwdriver to wedge in there and release the tab, and basically plug the new one in, slide it in where the old one came out. On these particular connectors, I found it was easier to slide the screwdriver in between the connector and the solenoid socket in here, and just pry it up, which will release the pin, the tab that's down here. Hope that makes sense. It will the solenoids around so that the tabs on the new L bracket that they supply slot into the solenoids to keep them from rotating, keeps them in the proper position. They should only go in one way. It takes a little wiggling, not a big deal. As long as you can see the slots, you can get it lined up pretty easily, and then reinstall and tighten the bolt. In case you thought it was going too easy, you got to take off a bolt that's up here on top of the top solenoid, which I can't show you and do, but it's up there. It appears to be an 8mm, and you're going to have to take it out entirely blind. Not a big deal, but fiddly. Bolt out, it'd probably be a good idea to leave the clip on it. That little hook goes up and helps keep the solenoid cabling out of the way. So this is the bit that holds the solenoid in place, the top solenoid, and keeps it from coming out. And now, time to remove the top solenoid. With it, it's held in by the same bolt, the same principle that holds the solenoid in place, keeps it from rotating with the tabs. So it's all pretty obvious, but just try to keep it all in place and together. This goes up against the transmission housing, and that bolt and the other clip go on top of this one. To know at least about the kit I got is that the replacement solenoid has a yellow connector while the original has a black. Doesn't really matter, but just thought I'd point it out. I noticed there are other slight differences. The size of the hex fitting in the end of the pintle, I believe that's the pintle, it's the valve that connects to the pintle on the end, but that's only an issue if you have to adjust anything, which is apparently unlikely. This is pretty much what it's going to look like when you put it back in place, when you get everything back together. So you'll have the solenoid, the tabs holding it in place, keeping it from rotating, and then the little spring clip on top with the bolt holding it all together. A little bit of black Permatex sealant, which I had to get out through the middle because the end was clogged up. Around here, just enough to hold the gasket in place whenever it goes on, because I won't be able to locate the top holes if I get it crooked, and it will be a gigantic pain in the butt. So with any luck, this will hold it in place just fine until the bolts go in which case they will do all the sealing as well as the gasket, and there won't be any leaks. Alright, now just loosely start all the bolts, get them in. Save that last top center one for last, as it is the most critical one, and then you want to start tightening from the bottom up, leaving that one for last, so you don't end up having to snug it up after you go around the clock ones. Done. Wipe everything down pretty good. So if you do end up with a leak, heaven forbid, you'll be able to see where it's coming from instead of having to guess. Now it's all buttoned up, just getting ready to put it back to get it operational again. And I'm going to add my requisite number of quarts of Mobil ATF 3309. Make your Volvo happy. A wise mechanic once told me, don't bother trying to test the level, because Volvo in their infinite wisdom put the dipstick where you can't possibly get to it when the engine's hot and the car's level. So he said basically you drain it, and when you put 4 quarts in, you're going to be almost exactly perfect. So she's getting 4 quarts.